Smart spaces is something you might have heard about, but wonder how is it real and how is it built? Today we have Carl from Acuity Brands was here to tell us everything you need to know about making smart spaces a reality and how his team has been implementing very interesting platforms and solutions on top of Microsoft products. That's today on the IoT Show. Hi everyone, welcome to the IoT Show. I'm Olivier, your host, and today we'll make smart spaces a reality. And for that, I have Carl with me. Carl, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm great, fantastic. We're having lots of fun already. So I think it's going to be a nice session.
Should be, yeah.
So Carl, apart from being an ex-Microsoft employee, right, you've done a lot of things. So who is Carl and what are you doing in life?
What am I doing in life? How about what we're doing in work? Life's a little much.
Yeah, we don't have much time.
Yeah. I was at Microsoft for 15 years, worked on a bunch of IoT stuff with partners. Mm-hmm. And one of the biggest challenges I saw in working with partners was that everybody did the data collection and then presented in a dashboard, and then they never moved to the next step. And so I wanted to do something where I could finish, right? Get a finished solution. So how do I go to its unfinished business? And so I went to Acuity Brands. Mm-hmm. It's probably a company most people have never ever heard of. They're the largest commercial lighting provider in North America. Okay. So the lights are in offices, parking lots, street lights, hospitals, all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. They'd been making a foray into smart buildings. Mm-hmm. And they were trying to figure out how do they go to the next step with that. And so they offered me the opportunity to come in and run the Atrius development organization to build out the smart building solutions that they've got. And in looking at it, so I wanted to take it from it's just a bunch of individual products to something that's fully integrated, providing significant value out to the customers.
Yeah, I love that. And we actually will have a couple of your colleagues coming for another set mm-hmm. of a couple of more episodes of the IoT Show mm-hmm. to dive deeper into this platform and a set of applications. Because I love the way you framed all of that, mm-hmm. making things a reality. Mm-hmm. And that's why I actually wanted to invite you here, right?
Great.
So before we go into the how, I'm curious to hear more about, Acuity Brands. You just mentioned rapidly what it was about. Mm-hmm. Can you tell me a bit more about these platform and these products you guys are doing? And we'll talk also about the why, Mm-hmm. How do you see the market besides the fact that people don't get to production or they're stuck at some step in their journey? Yep. So tell me a bit more about Acuity Brands to start with, and then we'll go into the
when I kind of get through. So we've got I mentioned about the size of the company. Yep. It's a $4 billion company, been around since the 1880s, mm-hmm. But morphed quite a bit. And we've got two major divisions. We've got our lighting division, which is what I mentioned, the mm-hmm. number one provider of commercial lighting. And then there's the Intelligent Spaces Group, which is the organization that I'm part of. Within the Intelligent Spaces Group, we have our Atrius product family, but we also have our Distech product family, mm-hmm. which is one of the largest providers of building management controllers in the world, and competes with a lot of the brands that you know. Yep. But a lot of this was really about the fact that we spend all of our time in a building. Mm-hmm. So it's 90% of our time is spent sitting in buildings, whether it's our houses or offices. Well, maybe not so much offices these days.
These days a bit more, a bit less.
But yeah, maybe a mall. I don't know. And so the challenge is really how do you take those facilities and how do we make them smarter? How do we make it so that you're not just seeing a dashboard, right? Mm-hmm. Yes, you need to have that data, but it's how do you go and do something with it mm-hmm. that's going to be useful to help make the facilities safer. But also, how do you make it greener? How do you make it more efficient, right? Mm-hmm. How do we go and take it from, I'm turning lights on and off where I need to, but I also want to make sure that my carbon impact for my facility is lighter. Yeah,
I like how you're saying that, because it's not like technology for the sake of technology, mm-hmm. right? Not technology for the sake of making something fancier. Right. Sometimes you won't, right? Because you wanna bring more people around, whatever. Mm-hmm. But in that case, we're really talking about having a purpose, an objective, which is, the smarter, safer, greener, and the greener is a big part of it, actually.
Absolutely.
Something that really everyone is concerned about these days.
Yeah, and if you take a look at our company as a whole, it's really around sustainability. How do we get people to get rid of their incandescent and fluorescent lights and use LEDs? How do you then actually do things like automated dimming? One of our customers told us that by just implementing automated dimming, it's saving them 20 million kilowatt hours a year. And that's the thing is we're focused on the consumption side. A lot of folks are focused on distribution and generation. We're focused on how do we help our customers
reduce the consumption side. Yeah,
that's right.
And then because you're very concrete, and we'll see that, you're asking tough questions, right? And I know you personally, you're challenging us a lot in terms of, you're telling me, Microsoft, that this is the way to do it, but actually, this might not be the right way to do it because that and this. And actually, I think it transpires through the couple of slides you have here and the way you're approaching things. So.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, the thing that is great about the team that we've got is that they've been living in the building management space for decades. And so there's a lot of that institutional knowledge that they've got that, Microsoft isn't necessarily focused on those areas, and that's part of the value that we think we can offer to Microsoft is having that institutional knowledge about how people use buildings, what they do with them, how they manage them.
Totally.
And it's also about how do you take the pieces from the cloud all the way to the edge?
Yeah.
Right? If I've got a building, I don't necessarily want to manage everything from the cloud. Sometimes I have good connectivity, sometimes I don't. There are some buildings where they have very little or no connectivity. Sometimes there's concerns about latency. I want the building manager to be able to interact with the building right when he needs to, but also take advantage of the fact if I've got a portfolio of, if you're Microsoft, 110 buildings in the Puget Sound area, something like that. Yeah. I want to be able to look at the whole portfolio, but in each building, I want to be able to do something right away.
Interestingly, you're bringing up the Microsoft Campus because one thing I wanted to highlight is the fact that it's not just about creating new smart buildings and starting from scratch. It's also about, and you kind of mentioned that in a way, but it's also about making existing buildings and so on smarter.
Right.
Because actually they're here to stay.
That's
it's
right.
not every other year you can just tear down a building and create a new one in its place. So you need to adapt to the infrastructure you have and leverage whatever you have available, right?
And if you think about it, the infrastructure in a building is there for 10, 15 years at least. You don't necessarily go in and remodel everything all the time. You don't rebuild everything all the time. And so you do have to worry about that brownfield environment and how do you go and integrate with that. Can't go in there and say, you know what, rip out all of your building management controllers and put in a new building management controller.
Yes. I was discussing with a friend of mine who was involved in the new Microsoft Campus project, and he was telling me 2 years ago already that the technology they're planning to put in the building in 2 or 3 years from now, right? Because the time of the construction, it's already a technology that is 5 years old.
Yeah.
So by the time the building is delivered, the infrastructure technology that is in there is already 5 to 10 years old. Yep. So that means you have to work with that anyways, right?
Well, it gets even more challenging if you have a campus like here at Microsoft, but also other campuses. It depends on when each building was built, what you might have for equipment. Because the decision on the equipment for this particular building is different from the decision for the buildings that you're building on the other side of campus, and different from the ones across the street. So you may have 10, 15 different environments and sets of equipment across the campus that you have to worry about.
Yep, totally.
And that's, if you take a look at what we do today, we do have energy reporting. That's a big part of what we're doing. We're bringing in the information both from the utilities as well as from the buildings themselves to be able to say, here's how you're using power, here's how you're consuming it, so that they can make good decisions. But then you've got all the regulatory stuff coming up where you have to be able to do ESG reporting, scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. And so we're able to automate the reporting of that information as well. So you've got the collection, you've got all those pieces, and that's what when we talk about it as the building performance side, that's what we talk about. Yeah, there's the controllers, but it's all about how do we report out on what's there and how you're using the data. Because for a lot of them, it helps them influence the business decision. Should I put solar panels on the building? Right? Is it going to be cost effective for me? Then there's the enterprise operations side for us, which is how do we know how the building's being used? Because that's actually more important, right? It's okay, I can turn lights on and off, But if I start turning the lights off when you're in the building, is that really a good idea? Or why am I putting the heat and the lights on the second floor when nobody's there until 10 in the morning?
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And so being able to understand that, yet we also work with big box retailers. You'll know all the names, right? And part of what they're doing is trying to understand how people are going through their stores.
Yep.
So some of it has to do with merchandising, but it's also about what's the flow of people through the store, what's queuing look like at the cash register, all of those kinds of things that they need to worry about. And then there's lastly this personal experience. So I've got a big facility. How do I know how to go from point A to point B? If you're using the Delta Airlines app and you land in the terminal and you want to know how to get from this gate to the next one, that app's us. American Airlines, the SeaTac app.
In building, wayfinding.
Wayfinding, Blue Dot, understand how you're going to get from point A to point B. And then if you take a look at that, you'll see, and we'll talk about it more, how different companies have taken approaches, right?
Yeah. So before we jump into the various, some examples of your solutions, it's something that you once again, you said it really well, but I want to put some spotlight on that. You don't own the whole systems. No. Usually when you come in, you're here for part of it, but you need to access information and infrastructure of the other systems that are there as well, right?
Right. Yeah, and so for us, it's really important to be open.
Yes.
Right? We've got to be open. We don't own the HVAC system. We've got our Acuity lighting, and yes, we own that, and it gives us great access to the information, but not everybody's got, we may be number one in North America. That doesn't mean there aren't a whole lot of other folks, whether it's the Signify or whomever. We need to be able to pull in the information, interact with those as well. And so for us, having an open platform is super important, and being able to understand how to talk to all those through industry standard protocols is also extremely important.
Yeah. So Carl, great. So that's definitely what Acuity Brands is doing in general, right? And what I want to look at right now is more of the solutions. You gave some examples, like with the Delta Wayfinding app and so on, but give me some more examples of what you guys are doing in terms of solutions or apps.
Okay, sure. So I'll just go through a couple of them that might be more relevant to folks. So our Building Insights product is that energy dashboard, the reporting solution that we were talking about. So bring in all of the utility data, bring in the data from all of the systems in the building to be able to report on how they're using energy. We have one customer is in Southern California. They used it to justify putting solar panels up on the roofs of their buildings. Well, after they did that, the cost of power flipped on them, right? So usually during the day, it's more expensive than at night. Well, for them, because it was during the day, it was free, and at night it was not, right? And so they were pulling the energy from the grid. They were now able to go cost justify to management that they should go get a bank of batteries. And that made it very simple for them to focus on, here, let's go do that and do the cost justification to be able to do that. So that's the business information that they need. And then there's new SEC regulations coming out. In the EU, there's a bunch of regulations coming out about being able to do ESG reporting. So what's your carbon impact, right? And so that's what comes out of building. That's some of the stuff that comes out of Building Insights. Whether it's a single building, a campus full of buildings, doesn't matter.
Love it.
The other one, and this is one where my colleagues will be coming in to talk about in the series we're talking about, is Enterprise Locator. This is, we can do track and trace. Let's see how things are going within a facility, whether it's forklifts in a distribution center or it's shopping carts inside of a big box retailer. Being able to understand what that movement looks like within the facility, and being able to understand, again, how that building's being used. Because the other part of this is, all right, if you have people coming in really late at night all the time, again, I don't want to be turning the lights on and off when they're not there. And so understanding usage, right, and being able to do things based off of usage is also very important for the customer that's trying to manage that building. And then finally, there's the wayfinding solution. So American Airlines, United Airlines, SeaTac Airport, Delta, Haneda, all using this application, doing it in different ways, and integrating it into their applications in different ways to be able to give people the sense of, how do I get from A to B, right? And understand what I'm going to see along the way. DFW Airport looks at it as, what are those points of interest that are along the way, and how do I, where's the Starbucks? Right. Let me see where that Starbucks is, right? And so that's a big part of it. Again, is being able to understand all of those pieces. But the challenge for us was each one of these is a bit of a silo. And the value is really about pulling the pieces together.
Okay.
And that's what we've been doing over the last year or so, is building out the platform that we need in order to be able to pull all the pieces together to get to the value that the customers are really looking for.
Yeah, that you just described really well, actually. And so people might be wondering right now, they've been like, I don't know, 10 minutes into the conversation, and it's like, there's not been any word about any of the Microsoft stuff in there, which is, I'm actually super happy with that. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to bring you in, because we focus on the underlying infrastructure and platform from the software perspective that you guys are building on top of, adding value, right? So very often we start our IoT chat with like, hey, here's IoT Hub, and here's how you connect the device and so on. But at the end of the day, people are having a hard time understanding why and what is it for. And so here you're really bringing that up. And what I want to do now is for you to, lift the curtain and show us what's under the hood, and then we'll talk about the value you're extracting from these services.
Yeah, and I think the key point is the why, right? And so for us, okay, could we go and build the messaging service to be able to connect stuff to? Sure. We can go do that. Go hire me another 50 engineers, and I'll be happy to go make all that happen.
A couple more years to make it scale.
Our CEO really wouldn't be that excited about it, because it's not the value that we offer. So we're looking at it, to your point, how do we go and just build on to the value and give the customer what's that value-added solution? And so for us, it's using a bunch of the Microsoft technologies, but a key component of that is building on top of digital twins.
Okay.
Right. And for those that aren't necessarily very well versed in it, for us, it's really important to understand the relationships within the building of all the components of the building. If you've got a 20-story tower, I want to know that there's 20 floors. On this floor, there's this many offices. There's thermostats here, here, and here. There's VAVs. There's JACEs. I want to know what the airflow is going to be like in that facility. Where's their windows, desks, conference rooms? But being able to have that understanding of the relationships between all of the different things that make up that facility are really super important for us, because then you can start mapping in everything else, and you can start making more intelligent decisions.
Yes.
Right.
Makes sense.
And so that's the thing for us was, we needed to be able to do that as a big baseline for us. And we talked about open industry standard. And so for us, we looked at it as, okay, there's a bunch of ontologies that are out there. So that you can create your data models. Two of the biggest are Real Estate Core and Brick.
In the world of smart
buildings.
Spaces or buildings.
In buildings, So you're absolutely right, because there's the manufacturing ones and all
there's
that.
There's so many.
And so we focus on buildings. There's those. There's one or two others, but those are the ones that most people are talking about.
Okay.
And so we landed on Real Estate Core because it fit a lot of what we were doing. But also what we were seeing was Real Estate Core and Brick were merging the ontologies. And so we could get the best of both worlds by focusing on Real Estate Core.
Got it. So you could, once again, you could have built your own digital twin engine, right?
Oh, yeah.
And graph and so on, right? And so you chose Azure Digital Twins. And I know for a fact it's not because you've been at Microsoft. And knowing you, like actually there would have been the contrary. Like knowing what's under the hoods, you could have run away. But for that matter, actually, you picked it up and you're using it. And you just mentioned, REC and other ontologies that are out there, industry standards. How is objectively Azure Digital Twins helping you with saving time and so on, but also interacting or leveraging these ontologies?
So you're right. We actually did an evaluation of building our own.
Yes.
We actually had started building out how we would go do it, and we were going to use a graph database as the back end. And we looked at that and it's like, wow, that's going to take an awful lot of time and effort when all the services we need are actually already there within Azure Digital Twin. All the connections, the integrations, and then frankly, DTDL is a super important part of it. Being able to use a language to expose the data model, to be able to interact with the data model is really, really helpful for us to be able to instantiate what we're trying to create. And then the fact that it's open, it's using REC, but if I needed to go bring in some other ontology, I could do that. That was really, really, really helpful for us. And we went from basically a standing start to delivery of the first iteration of our platform in 6 months.
Okay,
So, and this is on top of...
He's saying it.
Yeah. Well, and this is on top of the team. I mean, the team did an awesome job because they had to learn the technology first.
Yes.
So the first thing was they were already down the brick path, and they were using a graph database, and so they didn't know Azure Digital Twin. They didn't know IoT Hub. They didn't know Data Explorer. They didn't know any DTDL, any of that. So the first thing they had to do was go learn.
Yep.
And so they had to learn all that, figure out how to do it, do some POC. I mean, you know, engineers, I got to take place and code, right? And then go and actually build it. And when Chris is here, he'll talk about what his team did to go and build it out.
Love it. So. Love it. So I think people are super excited. You just mentioned Chris's session is coming up where we'll dive deeper into what's going on there. So what is it that people looking at this video need to go do if they want to learn more about Acuity Brands and so on? So where do you send them?
So there's a couple things you can do. So one, we're in the Azure Marketplace.
Okay.
So you can go onto the Azure Marketplace. We're IP co-sell ready for the Microsoft salespeople. We've got the IoT shows you mentioned coming up, but atrius.com is the best place to go.
Perfect.
To be able to get information about all of the solutions that we've talked about here. If you want to go and interact with somebody to get more information, you can send an email to sales@atrius.com. Did I get that right? Yeah, sales@atrius.com.
That's good news. That's not the email you tell people to go to very often. But
no.
In that case, that's a good one.
But those are good places for them to go and get more information. And then, of course, the upcoming IoT show recordings where hopefully they'll get more depth.
Yeah, we'll definitely do that. Well, thanks a lot, Carl. I hope that for everyone, it made digital smart spaces more of a reality. It is a reality. You mentioned some actual customers using these solutions and not having to rebuild everything on their own. That's key here with the integration to existing infrastructure, with existing buildings, and so on. So that's kind of magic, but reality. So I like it.
It is, and the partnership has been awesome. We've been able to get the information we need. We've been able to build what we need to build, and you'll have Andrew on. He'll talk about an application that's leveraging this platform of digital twins. So.
And adding value on top of the services, which is important here, because you're talking about a platform, but it's built on what we ourselves call a platform, which is like more granular.
We're confusing the hell out of everybody by everything's a platform, right?
Yeah, everything's a platform. That's perfect, and continue challenging us as well, because with the real life application that you're implementing on top of our services, you come with very on-point feedback that we ingest and adapt our services, adapt the version of DTDLs and so on based on all of that. So thank you, actually.
Sure, thank you.
Awesome. Carl, thanks. Everyone, thanks for watching. See you soon.